Hi, I'm Carole Robinson. Welcome to this edition of County Happenings, where we find out what's happening in the county by talking to the county mayor with the new eyes, Rogers Anderson.
Well, I've noticed with the last 2 or 3 shows I'm doing, I'm playing with my glasses. I had cataract surgery during the holiday season and very successful. I'm very proud that my doctor, David Brown, recommended, he told me 5 years ago that I was going to have to do it. And they got to that point where things were fuzzy and not as crisp as they needed to be. So with the aid of some good doctors, in 10 minutes worth of surgery, you too can see good, and I'm glad I did it. But I got to go through this process now where they totally heal. You've had surgery?
Yeah, got me a new hip. I'm bionic now.
You're bionic. We've had, all of us know people that have hips and knees and shoulders. That seems to be when we get past.
It's amazing what they can do.
Yes.
And and there's so many different reasons that things happen, but. I think, well, my gosh, years and years and years ago, people suffered through and just continued to be in pain, and now they can get you out of pain.
Well, you had a pretty good personal nurse, too.
Oh, I did. The best. He's still taking good care of me.
How many years has he done this? He probably didn't sign up for this.
Well, no, and for a lot of years he hasn't had to take care of me, but he stepped right up when he needed to. It's been 43 going on 44 years. I was a child bride, and he called me that for a long time.
I'll not go with that conversation. I'll leave it at that, but congratulations. Glad to see you back. A lot has happened over the last 45 days here in Williamson County.
Well, my goodness. Besides going through Christmas and New Year's and rebounding from that, and it seems like everybody just, they pushed through and got through and all the wonderfulness of the holiday, but boom, back to business again.
We're back to business. I was talking to Dr. Looney the other day. Of course, schools consume so many of your dollars that you have in your tax base, and we've got 2 brand new schools opening up in Nolensville. A new high school, they've already named it. I think it's called Nolensville High, but don't quote me on that. And then we'll open up another K-8 school. That community continues to just...
Yeah, and that means how many schools in Nolensville now?
Well, when these 2 come online in August and they're on schedule and under budget, as reported by Dr. Looney, we redid the Nolensville Elementary School, and then we did Sunset actually 10 years ago. It's been since
that long. And Sunset was a K through 8.
That's correct. So the model now is K through 8 for Dr. Looney. It does save time. It costs a little bit more on the bricks and mortar, but I said time. It saves money. In that you can have your elementary school on one side, and in the middle of the building are your core administrative offices, your cafeterias, those types of things, and then on the other side might be the middle school, traditional middle school. We've had one out in your neck of the woods, Hillsborough, for years and years, and then Sunset came along. But most of our schools are elementary, and then you go to middle school. But excuse me, we're going to see building schools is still going to be a way of life for a long time. I think I told you right before the show, in the last 9 or 10 years, we were actually 1 building permit for 2015 under the largest time that we've had in the last 8 or 9 years. So,
and if we'd gone 2, we would have broken the record.
Broken the record. A lot of us remember, and I know you do, the first part of this century, the 2003 and 4 and 5. We just couldn't catch our breath.
No, it was actually when things slowed down. It was an opportunity.
And we thought, oh my! And I was at a meeting the other night over in Brentwood, and one given year they had about 500 building permits, and now they're more than normal, which normal is about 250 to 275, and we're seeing that all over our municipality areas. In the unincorporated area, it's still pretty steady. We don't get large subdivisions as a general rule in our unincorporated area.
And unincorporated, for new viewers, is the county where it's outside city limits.
That's correct. And I think that's very, very important to point out, because so many of the rules and regulations that we have, from transportation to being a sheriff to just about everything other than schools. Roads are a good example that when a city annexes an area, like for an example in Thompson Station, just in the last few days, they annexed a sizable amount of property that was in the county, and the cities can annex. Well, they annex out into those areas, and if they don't annex the roads, then the county is still responsible for those roads. The cities aren't. So there's always that consternation.
That balance, yeah.
Balance.
How can they just take the property and not the roads?
Well, the law allows them to do that. Now, when those cities are annexing those border roads, for an example, in Coleman Road, you know where Coleman Road is, just up the street off from Columbia Pike and
Carter's Creek.
Carter's Creek Pike, all up, Carter's Creek Pike in that area. This new subdivision will border Coleman Road. Well, they didn't annex the road, so that'll still be the county's responsibility. Now, that does cause consternation between counties and cities when that occurs, because at the end of the day, after it's all said and done, the developer is not forced to address those county unincorporated roads. Now, if
And they're going to be using them a lot.
and they'll be using them. Now, they will have to address those roads if they enter their subdivision on a county, unincorporated county road. But as far as saying, okay, you need to widen it or do some of the things, there's no mechanism we have in state law or county law that forces them to do it. Now, the cities, through their regulations, can have them adjust those road widths and all the things that go on, and you see that best, say, in Franklin and Brentwood.
So your hands are tied because what the developer is developing within the city limits, so you don't have control over that.
That's correct. And the cities, they have certain boundaries they have to stay within in the urban growth boundaries. So I know there was a very, very large crowd out at Thompson Station recently talking about roads, schools, fire protection, all of the services that you traditionally see that go into a city. The smaller cities, the ones that are still being developed, Thompson Station being one of them, Nolensville is probably, 20 years deep into being a city now. So you're beginning to see the things that go on inside a
they're
more
beginning to
mature
build
city.
their police department and fire department.
Franklin, Brentwood are older cities. Fairview is certainly an older city, and they've got mechanisms set up. And if it was an example, you go to Franklin, a developer puts in, he has to pay those road impact fees. Whereas in the county, we don't have that mechanism because we don't see the kind of development. Now we've got one going up in the Grassland area. There's one that's on the drawing board. We're out off Tullis Road towards Nolensville. Those are truly inside the county. They'll have to have septic tanks.
And is that one of the reasons that the county doesn't see the magnitude of growth, because city and the water and sewers?
That's exactly it. You can't get the density. I live in the unincorporated outside the city limits, and there's probably 50 homes in our community. And all of them are on septic tanks, and septic tanks means two, main and backup. Well, that takes land. Then you have to have the field lines for those. So the density if it was inside the city with public utilities, would probably be more in the neighborhood of 120 to 130 homes, as opposed to 50 to 55
There's a minimum
homes.
acreage that you have to have.
And it's all based upon most people have heard the term, your land, your dirt being able to percolate, to perk. And even though the science has got more sophisticated, there are some alternative systems. At the end of the day, you have to have land in which the field lines run out through. You can't build over those field lines, and it's best not to even put a tree near, because the roots will always go towards the water and the saturation point. So there's probably a lot of people that wish we had that all over because of the traffic issues that we're having. But cities provide those services, and that's why cities oftentimes get into business. They want to have more concentrated of law enforcement, more concentration of fire protection, whereas counties, we're building, actually we've got two new fire stations, one on Downs Boulevard that services out into the unincorporated area, and we're building a brand new fire station at Goose Creek. And that Goose Creek operation will serve all of the unincorporated area, and we still run calls. Those volunteers go into the cities if they need help. more often we're needing the help of the cities to come out into the counties.
Well, and the county still has a volunteer fire and rescue department.
Very strong too. I'll say there's 6. I'd have to stop and add them up. But we've got those strategically placed throughout the county. And your community, if you're a man or a woman that's interested in being a volunteer fire person, please contact them because they can use you in some way.
Right, and now the training.
We pay for that,
okay.
and but we don't pay a salary to those men and women that go on the calls. Unfortunately, we had
it's truly a service.
It is a public service, and just like you give of your time you are paid some, but you give more of your time than you're ever compensated for it. And I'm paid as a mayor, but there are many, many things I do outside. It has nothing to do with the mayor because I want it to be a good community. And I think if I can't be a fireman anymore.
Yeah.
I'm past the days of being able to crawl up under a house or the physical restraints on that. But
you can bring a plate of food over once in a while.
I certainly can.
Or you can help them when they're doing their annual fundraising to get more equipment and stuff like that.
That's exactly right. The county's model is totally different from the cities in those volunteer services. The county's model is we give money for them or purchase for them equipment, fire trucks, backpacks, smoking apparatuses, air apparatuses.
And build buildings.
And we build buildings. We don't pay salaries. And that's the big difference. And that's often very hard.
And sometimes there's extra things that they particularly need that the county can't supply.
That's exactly right. One of the things we're finding, Carole, that's been very popular out in the Paytonsville area and out in the Grassland area, even Nolensville is, Nolensville City does not have a fire station. The fire station is the rescue squad.
Right.
So Nolensville supplements, gives some money to help augment some of the costs that are there. And only in the last 30 days have we had a full-time fire chief, a person that coordinates that. So if there's a fire inside the city limits, now you understand, Nolensville though requires all buildings to be sprinkled.
Right.
So your home,
just like Brentwood and Franklin.
Well, Brentwood and Franklin don't require your residence to be sprinkled.
Oh, I thought they did. I'm sorry.
Nolensville requires your home to be sprinkled.
Wow.
And so that's an extra cost to be borne by the homeowner.
Right.
But it's a savings cost for Nolensville because those homes aren't going to burn down as often as you might see in the rural part of our community. But Nolensville is probably one of the best volunteer fire departments across the South, and it's been run by various men, but one in particular, I think he's been there 30 years, and now he still goes on a few calls. He doesn't crawl up in the attics and stuff like that, but I'm telling you, you just could not survive without your men and women to do the volunteer work. Probably be a good thing for me to have a show one day to talk about Bill Jordanson, Mac Purdy, and that they bring to the table. But in the Paytonsville area, what we're doing, I alluded to it, and I'll get off from it. We are recruiting. We're building a building at Goose Creek, the Paytonsville one we could do it, and then the Grassland location is building living quarters there, so that a young man or a young woman.
And the new one at LoJack has some living quarters.
That's right. LoJack's has another one. I forgot about that one. That a young man, a young woman that's got an interest in fire protection, maybe going to school at Columbia State or Murfreesboro, depending on where they go to school. We provide them a place to sleep, lay their head down and sleep. We get something out of that, not just a man or a woman there to kind of oversee and be on call, but that person is there on that first call. Because oftentimes if you and I are volunteers, we're at home in the middle of the night or we're working.
And you got to get to the firehouse.
You got to get your equipment on, you got to get out there and get in the truck to go. And so that's all critical mass. The other thing about putting these stations around the community, your insurance service office's ratings on what you pay for homeowners insurance is critical. That if you're within 5 miles, within 1,000 miles of within 5 miles of a fire station, within 1,000 feet of a fire hydrant, and you're supplied of a full-time person that's there, your homeowner rates can significantly drop.
Ours did,
You
significantly.
take out there in the rural area where you're at, you went from what they call an unprotected fire class. In other words, if you had a fire,
9.
chances
We were in 9.
your chances of surviving and you're saving your home were very, very, very small.
Yeah.
Now they recognize somebody's there, they can get there, and it's a big savings in your bill.
Oh my gosh, we did the happy dance. And we're still doing it when we get our bill.
And those are little things that government should know about, understand, and how to strategically place this. Now, as compared to Franklin, there's 10 classes, 1 being the best, 10 being
uninsurable,
almost uninsurable, and then there is one other class that we don't have. We don't like to talk about. It's totally unprotected. You're out in the middle of the boondocks. By the time they got there, the trees are gone on top of the house. But Franklin's a 1.
Wow.
It's the best. Now, you just don't get any better than that.
Yeah,
That's a real credit to
but
them.
and that's and that's wonderful for the people in Franklin. But people make their choices as to where they live.
That's exactly right.
And that you have to, if it's important for you to be a 1, then you live in the city. And if it's important for you, if that's not high on the list, then you choose like we did. We made our choices and we're paying the bill, but we're so glad it's much lower.
Yeah, I understand.
And speaking of choices, now we've got, we were starting to talk about schools. You got
Diverse.
diverted, yeah. We've got new school now, just some new schools going up in Thompson Station eventually. You just purchased the land.
Yeah, we did. 47 acres, basically on Clayton Arnold. Most people would know where Kreitz Lane is, but Clayton Arnold, you go up off of Kreitz Lane about 1.5 miles or so, and it's right there in that area, 47 acres. It's actually in a subdivision. The schools do that part of the leg of developing. The county commission does the funding, but they purchased those 47 acres with the taps that have already been approved for that. The taps would go back to the Thompson Station area, and that's important to remember. We've really not done a lot of that, which is simply telling us land is getting harder for us to purchase, and we're trying to stay within not building treatment plants.
Like you had to at Independence?
Independence. If you're a Page resident, you've been on treatment plant, there's no sewer out there.
Right.
So if you can stay within the confine, but that land is quite expensive when it's already been developed as a subdivision. It's got the tap fees on those, but the land was purchased, or the money was authorized for the purchase of the land to build a K-8 out in the Thompson Station area, which will help alleviate some of the crowding that is going on from Spring Hill to Heritage, and the whole area out there is just continuing.
There's going to be a school on every other block, on every other corner.
Yeah, I think I heard someone say the other day we've got 45 or 46 now, and I can hardly
remember when we had 12.
I know it would be difficult for me to name all of the schools. Now, I've been to all the schools one way or another, but we were talking about building one inside the subdivision. Allendale is an elementary school that's stuck right in the middle in Spring Hill. But Mr. Jim Carole, who's deceased now, gave us land for an elementary school on the far end of Spring Hill. Many years ago, he was building apartments and homes and literally gave the land to the county so they'd put a school in. And we get a few of those around, but for the most part, we wind up paying a pretty shiny penny for land.
So what happens when you've got growth around schools, but you can't find the land? I mean, Brentwood's getting pretty locked in.
That's a great question, and Dr. Looney kind of alluded to it the other night. I was at a meeting, and we'll use Brentwood for an example. Brentwood High School, which used to be called
North Side,
when it first opened in the 80s, not a lot of land left around Brentwood. So what do? Now, oftentimes people say, well, just build on top of it. Well, you have to stop and think, will the base support that growth? I mean, the new building structure. There's a lot of issues And your building codes may or may not allow you to build on top. More cases than not, they're not. If the foundation is not laid correctly, you don't have the base, so you just can't put more weight on it.
You can't put another level onto it.
You just can't do that. So you may have to start looking at reconfiguring what you have. In the Brentwood area, particularly around, say, Scales Elementary, which is one of the feeder systems to the Brentwood Middle and to the high school, that whole community is being redeveloped. People my age are getting to the point, I want to downsize. I don't want to take care of a large house. So the next generation's coming in, purchasing those homes, knocking a wall out here, putting a new sink in here, painting this.
Putting addition on over here.
And guess what? They're bringing their children. I'm out of the child. I'm in the grandbaby stage, and not into the child stage. And so I move out, new group comes in, and so a lot of that is occurring all over our county. Cottonwood's another example of that, where my generation's leaving, the next generation's coming in. So instead of getting relief from those older community areas, now we're being bombarded. Okay, now they're coming back at, and plus you've got all the new growth over here, so you've got to figure out new ways to do your school. And Dr. Looney said the other night, what would happen if we, for an example, took artificial turf, put it on the football field, so the football field could be used for practice and more usage than having a practice football field. And so you just got to run the numbers. I mean, artificial turf is not cheap, but it does allow you to just use it and use it and use it.
Well, very little maintenance.
And very little maintenance. Artificial
and
turf.
drought, it's still there.
Drought's still there. It does not require any rain or sunshine to make it work, and you just can't hardly wear it out. And about every 7 to 10 years, you may have to replace it.
So you put all that maintenance fees towards that.
They might put them into that area, but that frees up other land that maybe you can do some building to address some of the growth issues you got. I'm not saying on air that's what's going to happen, but you've got to have.
You've got to look at options.
The other one is Franklin High School. Columbia State will
totally
be leaving.
Surrounded.
They're totally surrounded.
But you've got that building that used to be a vocational school.
That's right, and it's been Columbia State for a long time. They've got a proposal out to look at, as Franklin continues to grow, could you use that building? Could you use the baseball field? Where could you relocate the baseball field, which is on the Parks and Recreation Division? So you got lots and lots of drafts, lots and lots of options you need to start considering, because building a high school is around a $50 million price tag now. And building a K-8 school, what we would call a K-8, it's getting upwards of $35 million. And elementary schools are $25 to $30 million. It's hard enough to find labor to build them, but the cost of the raw land is just expensive.
And the raw land, and in the case of a high school, you need more land because of the outside activities. And the cost of the building, you put more kids into it than you would in an elementary.
And we build buildings different than we used to build buildings. The corridors, the hallways are wider. You have more special issues that you have to deal with in a building today. What you can't, what materials you can use, what you can't. All those things that go into making a building run up the price tag on that. And Kevin Fortney does a great job. But his hands are tied, and particularly when you and I can get in our car and drive straight up to Nashville, and it's Crane City. I think I heard the other day there's 19 cranes up there.
It's a great view when you go to the Adventure Science Center.
Yeah. And so when you've got all that building going on, your labor pool, your labor market is not as robust out of here, because they can go up there and go to work for the next 2 years. And here, we can build a school in a year or two, and it's the skilled trade labor is. Right now, there's just not a lot of excess men and women.
I keep hearing that, people saying, "Oh, I want to build this and I want to build that," and the waiting list to get somebody to do it is very it's a long time. And along with building schools and people coming in, that impacts other areas of government, law enforcement, the judicial system, Parks and Rec, and transportation.
Yeah. let's deal with transportation.
We just have a few minutes, so we're just going to.
Now, you know, the area of transportation is really on everybody's mind now. Is it bad enough that people would pay extra money for it? I don't think so.
I don't think so.
It's bad at school time, morning time. It's bad in the evening when you come home. It's getting a little bit tedious during the day. But when school was out, for an example, and you stay out of those school zones, you can kind of get around.
Yeah, it was amazing how.
And a lot of us are beginning to notice what could we do to encourage more people to ride the school bus. Now, if you're a junior or senior, there's probably not. In fact, I had a class tell me there is nothing you can do to make me want to ride that yellow school bus.
But I never could understand the lines at the elementary and middle schools for parents to pick up, and parents are willing to sit in a line for 15, 20 minutes to pick up their kids or drop them off in the morning when a school bus comes right by the house. I just never understood
Well, I
that.
think it's a different world we live in. I know when I was a boy growing up, I had, in high school, you had a job to go to, you rode your bike, you know, you went to it was country rural school. Today's children are involved in everything from gymnastics to ball practice to dance to music, and parents have to get them there.
That's true.
I'm not saying it's good or bad, I'm just stating the fact that the school that I was at the high school doing the civics education there was 4 classes of 20 or 22 each, and not one kid, not one of those seniors, not one, had ridden the bus. Not one.
The whole time they've gone to school?
No, that morning.
Oh, that
when I
morning.
asked them.
Okay.
So there was 80 cars being parked on school property that we had bought, these high-priced dollars. To those children, they think it's right. And I remember my children, they want to drive that car to school. But it does cause congestion.
Yes.
And it does cause traffic.
Yeah, you don't want to be by
woes.
Franklin High School, Centennial High School, or
Any
any of
high
those,
school.
any high schools
Arno Road.
when they're coming out.
Arno Road, when they let school out or in the mornings, is bumper to bumper. So we are addressing it. Leadership is dealing with it in Franklin and Brentwood and all the surrounding. Myself, we're getting with our highway superintendent, we're getting with the state folks. There's no easy solution. Most people want more lanes. They don't want to be forced to ride buses or transportation. Adults aren't really much different than younger people. They don't want to ride the
We like our cars. We like our
cars.
independence.
That's right. So we are dealing with them, but the court system you brought, I know we've got a few seconds. More people, just more lawsuits, more issues. We're busting at the seam in that area too. So our county is thriving. They're still holding their AAA bond rating. Great schools, great place to live, quality
Which is
of
the
life.
reason we're busting at the seams.
Bingo.
And I hope to see you next time on County Happenings, and we'll talk more about those seams.